Samuel, part 2, take 2. I said last week, I had edited a video, everything was good to go, and it deleted on me. So, today, it's happening, okay? It's just happening. What I would like to start off with is in Samuel. We've got a lot of information to go through, so if I'm talking too fast, please let me know. Other than that, I have a lot of information to cram into a 10-minute video. Okay. So I started back on chapter 8 because I always like to read the last chapter that I left off on to go forward into the next chapters I'm going to be proceeding in. So Samuel, if we go chapter 8, verses 19 to 20, the king will fight our battles. Okay, sorry to burst your little bubble, but aren't we the one fighting their battles? We're the ones going to war. We're the ones killing people. We're the ones fighting for something that they make us believe is something else, because us humans, we fight for meaning. You give us a purpose, and we're passionate people. But they stick us against each other, thinking that we're fighting for something, and we're fighting their battles. A king makes us fight their battles. They ain't fighting our battles. What kind of battles are they fighting for us? They fund our war? Think about it. You're literally killing someone you've never met. You don't get to justify your actions. You never knew the bloody person to begin with. Excuse the pun. It is what it is. Forgive yourself so you can evolve and do better. Choose differently. This is how you get from point A to point B. We can't change our history. We need to know how dangerous. We need to know how dark we can be to understand what we will never be again. Okay? If you don't know your darkness, if you want to deny your darkness, you're denying the very thing that we are and are capable of. You need to embrace your duality. And I'm going to put some of that up in this video right here.
Because there's some real utility in knowing that you're a monster. Now, and just because you're a monster doesn't mean you have to be a monster. But it's really useful to know that you are one. Everything horrible that human beings have done was done by human beings, and you're one of them. And so if you don't understand that, and to understand that really means to know how it was that you could have done it. And that's a shattering thing. To try to imagine that, to try to imagine yourself as someone who's engaged in medieval torture, to see how you could in fact do that. You're never the same after you learn that. But being never the same after learning that is unbelievably useful. Because when you understand that that's what you're like, then you're a whole different creature. You cannot be a good person until you know how much evil you contain within you.
Verses 10. So Samuel told the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king, and he said, "This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his own chariots and to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over the thousands and captains over his 50s, will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariot. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields and vineyards and your olive groves and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage, and he will give it to his officers and servants, and he will take your male servants and female servants, your finest young men and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servant. And you will cry out to the Lord. And you will cry out in that day because of your king whom you have chosen for yourself. And the Lord will not hear you in that day." Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. Okay, so when I was going to a Mormon church, it was mandatory that we paid a tenth of our income to the church. And now that I'm reading this chapter, I now see that is not the way of God. It is a warning. Saying, is this really what you want? You want them to take a tenth of everything that you've done? And just pay it to your king that you've chosen. People, you need to start taking things for what it is and looking at the words for what they are. This is a warning. I then highlighted in chapter 9, verses 8. And the servant answered Saul again and said, look, I have here at hand 1/4 of a shekel of silver, and I will give that to the man of God to tell us our way. Formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he spoke thus, come, let us go to the seer. So a prophet was actually called a seer. And it says that, for he who now called a prophet was formerly called a seer. What about that? That's fucking cool. And seer is more of a, they've claimed that to be more of a mystical thing, something to do with magic, something which they say is bad, but yet they get the name originally from the word seer. So was it really ever to do with magic? Or was it a conspiracy to make it bad and give it a new name called a prophet? So originally they've lost their donkeys. Saul and his friend, the servant that went along with him, which I forget his name. So they left from Benjamin to go find the donkeys, and then they go and they travel around. They don't see it anywhere. And then the servant says, why don't we go see the man of God out in, it says, there is in this city a man of God. Anywho, so they went up the hill to the city. So we don't know what city they're talking about. Oh, and it also references in a high place. The next thing that I highlighted in chapter 9 was verse 21. And Saul answered and said, am I not a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel? My family, the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin. Why then do you speak to me like this? So when they returned to the city to go to speak to the seer, the man of God, to find out where their donkeys are, he was already expecting them. So he tells them, don't worry, your donkey has been found, and your father is worried, but come with me. I've been waiting for you. And Saul is confused because he is part of the lowest tribes of his community. And he's not used to being treated like royalty because he's not. But I don't want to ruin anyone. Let's keep going. So they get the meal. They go sit at this fancy table. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And I will reference as well in verse 27. They're talking about the word of God, not the Lord. And then when you get into chapters 10, so there's something called a terebinth tree of Tabor. And I don't know what it was about this tree, but I kind of got hooked on it. Some interesting facts about this tree. And all the links will be included in the video description below. First of all, I was like, well, what the fuck is this tree in the first place? So that led me here. Okay, so the terebinth tree, which is a tree that contains turpentine. It is a delicious shrub species of the genus Pistachia, whatever that is. It's in Morocco, Portugal, Greece, Turkey, the Mediterranean Sea, Syria, Lebanon, da-da-da-da. Okay, so as we keep going down, we can see that it comes in some fruit right there and dry. Okay, cool. But then I was like, okay, well, what the fuck is turpentine, right? So then I clicked on turpentine. Turpentine, which is also called spirit of turpentine, oil of turpentine, terebinth, whatever it is, a fluid obtained by the distillation of resin harvested from living trees, mainly pines. Principally used as a specialized solvent, it is also a source of a material for organic synthesis. So that's what it looks like. Okay, so anyway, that led me here. Let me just close all these. Okay. drugs.com. And I was like, okay, well, what the hell is this drug? Turpentine has been reported to be useful as a antiparasitic for its antiparasitic effects, particularly in the treatment of, I don't know what that word is. Anyway, we're going to keep going down. Okay, so then I went all the way down here, the history, bone metabolization. I've seen this. Animal data. A study of rats inhibition of bone reabsorption occurred in a dose-dependent manner with turpentine. So I was like, okay, well, what the hell is bone reabsorption, right? Inhibition of bone reabsorption. So then that led me right here. So estrogen inhibitor, bone reabsorption. So estrogen deficiency causes bone loss, which can be prevented by estrogen replacement. So I was like, okay, so if you're losing bone mass at like a mass rate, you can take estrogen and stop that. Okay. But something about bone inhibition, your body reabsorbs the bone so that it puts the bone somewhere else where your body needs it. So if it's stopping the bone reabsorption, what's helping the bone regrowth and the displacement of where the bone needs to be? It feels more like a band-aid, not necessarily such an actual fix for the body to be able to work properly. Anywho, so I couldn't just stop there, I had to keep going. So in May, I'm just going to have this read it. Okay.
In May 1948, the Israeli infantry's Golani Brigade occupied Mount Tabor and most remaining members of the FFT Arab-A Tzabiach tribe fled to Syria and Jordan, except for the clan of Shibli, whose members collaborated with Israel. After the war they became Israeli citizens in the village Arab Al-Shibli, which is now part of the village Shibli-Umm al-Ghanam.
Kind of odd since you can't apply for citizenship there nowadays. Evangelists.
The terebinth produces turpentine oil, a resin which, being astringent, was used in the ancient East for medicinal purposes. It was also used to sweeten wine and certain foods. Now it is the basic element in the development of a dissolvent product known as turpentine.
There is also known to be 600 tropical species of this tree, which only 4 of them are safe to ingest. And I'm going to show you guys that on the sciencecorrespondence.com. So if I go to my photos here, where did you go? No, that's not right now, is it? Right up here, that's where it is. This is the spiritual side of things, and I absolutely love this perspective. So as it's reading it to you, I'm going to leave the video up. I'm not going to leave the video off. This is just what I found out about this tree.
Lindley calls this turpentine a limpid, fragrant, balsamic resin, with an odor between lemon and fennel. Vegetable Kingdom, page 467. He says, also, that trees of this family yield valuable varnishes, and that many members of the family are highly poisonous, among which are poisonous ivy and sumac, which induce, and also relieve, painful skin and rheumatic diseases. As the oak represents a knowledge of natural teachings of right and wrong, as applied to the affairs of life, the terebinth seems to represent a knowledge of similar teachings which conduce to peace, to smoothness of living in society, and to the removal of irritation. Its balsamic resin shows the pleasant soothing thought of the intelligence which it represents, and the affection in it is further indicated by the combustible, heat-giving power of the resin. The use of kindred resins for varnishes points in the same direction, and it is manifest that the knowledge of human infirmities which is necessary to adjust our social relations to smooth and peaceful working, if used perversely, has power to produce irritation and inability to work at all, which appears to be represented by the highly poisonous effects, especially upon the skin, produced by some plants of the family. Its representation is parallel with that of the oak, the one relating to what is right, and the other to what is good. On the same plane, The dry stone fruit of the terebinth further indicates its representation of a knowledge of what is good. The composite character of its leaves may indicate the perception of complex relations, as the strongly lobed oak leaves seem to represent a perception of the application of principles of right in various directions. Author, John Worcester 1875.
What is right and what is good? My God, those words. So I usually say we have two paths. We have a path between what is right and what is almost right. And another way of saying it would be what is right and what is good. Gives me chills. Ooh, it gives me chills. Anyway, so they appoint the kings. They ended up getting into a war. And then Saul doesn't end up following the instructions of Samuel. He ends up doing his own thing, which was a sin against God. And therefore, they all got into they were, for 7 days, that in chapter 11, verses 3, hold off for 7 days, and we may send messengers to all the territories of Israel, and then if there is no one to save us, we will come out to you. Then Samuel goes to go preach, and he said, only fear the Lord and serve him in truth and with your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. But you still do wickedly. You shall be swept away, both you and your king. Chapter 13, verses 3. As Jonathan attacked a garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba, the Philistine heard of it, and Saul blew the trumpet and throughout all the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. Saul, he was still in Jajal, and all the people followed him, trembling. Then he waited 7 days. So there's something with the number 7. I'm starting to realize that as well. You have done foolishly. So this is Samuel talking to Saul. You have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandments of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. The Lord had sought him, commanded him to be commander over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. Present with him. Oh yeah, this is chapter 13, verses 19. Okay. The Philistines to sharpen each man's plows, his mill. So it came about on that day of battle that there were neither swords nor spears found in the hands of any of the people who were with Saul and Jonathan his son. But they were found with Saul and Jonathan his son. So they were the only ones with knives or weapons. And we're going to leave it there, you guys. I know this is a lot of information to do all at once, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one. Ciao for now.